everyone! Today we're doing just a little compilation of the year-by-year videos and reels for the Winter Olympics. And this is Caelia. She'll be with me throughout the video as usual. The 1924 Winter Games were held in Chamonix, France, and were originally titled International Winter Sports Week. It was only in 1926 that the IOC retroactively designated them as the first Winter Olympic Games. The event featured 258 athletes from 16 different countries competing in 5 original sports: bobsleigh, curling, ice hockey, skating, and Nordic skiing. The most dominant athlete of these inaugural Winter Games was Finnish speed skater Klas Thunberg, who won 5 medals, including 3 golds. And these games established the feasibility of a separate winter cycle, though logistical challenges of ice maintenance and mountainous terrain were immediately evident. The 1928 Winter Games took place in St. Moritz, Switzerland, and were the first to be held in a different nation from the Summer Games of that same year. The event was severely impacted by fluctuating weather, temperatures of 25 degrees Celsius, which for you Fahrenheit people is basically a mild summer temperature in Europe, causing several events to be postponed and the 10,000 meter speed skating race to be cancelled due to melting ice. These games marked the debut of the skeleton on the famous Cresta Run, a natural ice track. In figure skating, the 15-year-old Sonja Henie of Norway won her first 3 consecutive Olympic gold medals, a record that helped popularize the sport globally. The 1932 Winter Games were the first to be held in North America. Due to the Great Depression and the remote location of Lake Placid, New York, the participation was limited to 252 athletes from 17 different nations, and many events were moved to private indoor rinks to ensure consistent ice quality. A unique historical record was set by the American athlete Eddie Egan, who won gold in the 4-man bobsleigh, having previously won a boxing medal at the 1920 Antwerp Summer Games. Egan remains the only person to win a gold medal in both Summer and Winter Olympics in different sports, and skeleton and curling were both removed from the program for these games. The 1936 Games were held in the Bavarian Alps of Germany. For the first time, alpine skiing was included in the Olympic program, featuring combined event of downhill and slalom. However, this sparked controversy over the amateurism, as the IOC banned ski instructor because they were considered professionals, leading to the boycott by Swiss and Austrian skiers. Norwegian speed skater Ivar Ballengrud, I hope I pronounced that right, was the most successful athlete, winning 3 gold medals and 1 silver across 4 distances. And like the Berlin Summer Game of that same year, the event was utilized by the Nazi regime for international propaganda before the 12-year hiatus that was caused by World War II. The 1948 Games marked the return of the Olympics after the war and were held once again in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Because of the role in the conflict, both Germany and Japan were not invited to participate. These games saw a temporary return of skeleton and a significant technical milestone for figure skating. Figure skating at the time is quite different from figure skating today, and the scoring system is also very different in between figure skating at the time and today. The equipment is different. There's a whole bunch of different things. So maybe we'll have to do a video on the history of figure skating at some point. The American Dick Button became the first skater to successfully land a double axel in competition, earning the gold medal. The austerity conditions of the post-war era meant that many athletes competed with refurbished equipment or low-quality equipment, and yet still 28 nations participated, which signaled the revival of the international winter sports movement. The 1952 Games were held in Oslo, Norway, making it the first Olympic where the hosting city is also the capital city of the country. These games introduced the use of computers to calculate scores in figure skating and the results in time-based events. Norway completely dominated the medal table on home soil, led by speed skater Halmar Andersen, who won 3 gold medals by the largest margin in history. The 1952 program also saw the introduction of great slalom in alpine skiing, providing a middle ground between the technical slalom and the high-speed downhill event. The 1956 Winter Games in Cortina d'Ampezzo were the first to be televised, reaching audiences in 22 different countries. This Olympiad also marked the winter debut of the USSR, or Soviet Union, which immediately dominated the Games by winning the most medals, including a gold in ice hockey, breaking the long-standing Canadian winning streak. The individual star of the Games was the Austrian Toni Sailer, known as Blitz from Kitz, who became the first skier to sweep all 3 alpine gold medals, downhill slalom and giant slalom, in a single Olympiad. The 1960 Games in Squaw Valley, California were noted for their innovative presentation with an opening and closing ceremony directed by Walt Disney. These were the first game to use instant replay technology after officials requested to review a tape to see if a skier had missed a gate. The program also saw the debut of biathlon and women's speed skating. However, for the first and only time in Winter Olympic history, bobsleigh events were not held simply because the organization committee just did not really want to build a track for only 9 competing nations. The American skater Carol Heiss won the gold medal, continuing a 4-year undefeated streak. The 1964 Innsbruck Games faced a severe lack of snow due to a mild winter, so the Austrian army had to transport 20,000 blocks of ice and 40,000 cubic meters of snow from higher altitudes to the competition runs. The Soviet Union, Lydia Shablekova, made history by winning all 4 women's speed skating gold medals and is the first athlete to win 4 gold medals in a single Winter Olympic Games. And the 1964 program also saw the introduction of luge and the return of bobsleigh. The 1968 Winter Games in Grenoble were the first to be broadcast in color. This Olympiad introduced 2 critical administrative protocols: mandatory gender testing for all female athletes and formal drug testing for all athletes to detect performance-enhancing substances. On the slope, the Frenchman Jean-Claude Killy achieved a triple crown, winning all 3 alpine skiing events on home soil. These games were also the very first to feature an unofficial mascot, a character named Schuss, beginning the tradition of Olympic mascots. The 1972 Games in Sapporo, Japan were the first Winter Olympics to be held outside of Europe or North America. These games were marked by a strict crackdown on amateurism. Austrian skier Karl Schranz was disqualified just before the games for having received basically sponsorship money from equipment sponsors. The competitive highlight was Dutch speed skater Ard Schenk, who received 3 gold medals. Despite the distance and travel cost, 35 nations participated, further globalizing the Winter Olympic movements into Asia. The 1976 Games were originally awarded to Denver, Colorado, but after voters rejected the funding for the Games, these were moved to Innsbruck, Austria again on short notice. Since Innsbruck had recently hosted the Games, they utilized many of the venues from their 1964 run, and it helped for the sudden transition. Ice dancing was also added as a medal sport for the very first time, and the American skater Dorothy Hamill won gold and achieved celebrity in the skating world. While the Games saw a record of 37 nations compete, this was the very first time that 2 Olympic flames were lit at the same time, representing both the 1964 and 1976 Innsbruck Games. The 1980 Winter Games in Lake Placid, New York are best known for the Miracle on Ice, where the amateur US hockey team defeated the heavily favored USSR team. However, the technical standout of the games was the American speed skater Eric Heiden. Heiden won all 5 individual speed skating gold medals from the 500 meter all the way up to the 10,000 meter, setting 5 Olympic records and 1 world record. He remains the only athlete to win 5 individual gold medals in a single Winter Olympiad. The 1984 Games, held in Sarajevo, marked the first time Winter Olympics were held in a socialist country. The event saw massive expansion in media coverage, with over 100 countries broadcasting the competitions, and the most iconic moment occurred in ice dancing, where the British duo Torvill and Dean received a row of perfect 6.0 scores for their performance to Ravel's Bolero. These games were praised for their hospitality and atmosphere shortly before the region was devastated by the Bosnian War a decade later. A side note on the skating scoring: the scoring changes basically every season, or almost every season. So a perfect 6.0 at the time is a little bit different from perfect scores today, but at the time, those are basically perfect. That's what you have to remember. The 1988 Calgary Games were extended to 16 games to span over 3 weekends, increasing the television revenue. These were the first games to use artificial snow on a massive scale to combat the warm Chinook winds of Alberta. Italian skier Alberto Tomba, nicknamed La Bomba, won both the slalom and grand slalom. The program expanded to include the Super G and team events in alpine skiing. The Olympiad also gained fame for the participation of the very first Jamaican bobsleigh team and British ski jumper Eddie the Eagle Edwards. The 1992 Games in Albertville were the last Winter Olympics to be held the same year as the Summer Games. They also marked the final appearance of demonstration sports like speed skiing and curling. Quick note is that curling does come back, it's just it comes back as a medal sport and not as a demonstration sport. That's the only difference. American speed skater Bonnie Blair successfully defended her 500-meter title and added gold in the 1,000 meter. In the 1992 program saw the addition of short track, speed skating, and freestyle skiing moguls as medal events. Following the fall of the Berlin Wall and the USSR, a unified German team and a unified team for the USSR, or former USSR states, competed in these games. The 1994 Games were held just 2 years after the previous edition to stagger the winter and summer cycles. These games focused heavily on environmental sustainability, with venues like Viking Ship speed skating rink built to be energy efficient. During these Lillehammer Games, Norwegian skater Johan Olav Koss became a national hero by winning 3 gold medals and breaking 3 world records. Freestyle skiing aerials were also added to the program. The 1994 Games are frequently cited by historians as the most successful Winter Olympic in history. The 1998 Nagano Games introduced snowboarding as an official Olympic sport and, for the first time, allowed professional NHL players to compete in the ice hockey tournament. This significantly raised the level of the global competition and viewership. The Austrian skier Hermann Maier survived a high-speed crash in the downhill that sent him flying through 2 different safety nets, and he still returned 2 days later to win gold medals in the Super G and giant slalom. Women's ice hockey and curling also made their big return this year as a permanent program. The 2002 Games in Salt Lake City were the first major international sporting event held after September 11th, resulting in unprecedented security measures. The Games saw a major expansion of extreme sports to attract younger demographics, and Norway Ole Einar Bjørndalen became the first biathlete to win all 4 gold medals in his sport. That same year, skeleton also returned as a permanent medal event after a 54-year absence, and despite a judging scandal in pairs figure skating that led to awarding of 2 sets of gold medals, the game were considered a commercial success. The 2006 Games in Turin, Italy, focused on urban venues and Italian design. These games introduced snowboard cross, a high-speed racing version of snowboarding, which became an instant spectator favorite. The American snowboarder Shaun White won his first gold medal in halfpipe, beginning his era of dominance in the sport. The 2006 Games also featured 80 nations, and it emphasized style and passion, utilizing the city's industrial heritage for the Olympic Village and media coverage. The 2010 Games in Vancouver recorded the highest attendance in Winter Olympic history. At the time, Canada set a record for most gold medal won by a host nation in the Winter Games, totaling 14. The most significant moment for the host country was Sidney Crosby's golden goal in overtime against the United States to win an ice hockey gold medal. Ski cross was added to the program, and the games were noted for their integration of Indigenous First Nation culture into ceremonies and branding. The 2014 Sochi Games were the most expensive in Olympic history, with a cost estimated to $51 billion. That's incredible. The games were held in a subtropical resort city, requiring massive snow storage and refrigeration technology for the mountain venues. Ole Einar Bjorndalen of Norway won his 13th career medal, becoming the most decorated Winter Olympian in history at the time, and the new events that year included slopestyle for skiing and snowboarding, as well as women ski jumping, which had been included from the program for decades. The 2018 Games in Pyeongchang, Korea, returned to a classic sub-zero winter climate. The major diplomatic highlight was the formation of a unified Korean women ice hockey team featuring athletes from both North and South Korea. The American snowboarder Chloe Kim became the youngest woman to win a snowboarding gold medal at age 17, and the program saw the addition of big air in snowboarding and mixed doubles in curling, continuing the trend of adding viewer-friendly and mixed-gender event. A small personal side note on the 2018 Winter Olympics, they have a very special place in my heart because I arrived in Korea basically as the closing ceremony of the Paralympics for the Winter Olympics was happening. So, very special place in my heart. I haven't left Korea since, I've been here since those games happened, and unfortunately I didn't get to see them because I arrived right at the closing, but still, because they're the same year, they're very much linked in my head, and no one cares. Anyway, they have a special place in my heart for that. In 2022, Beijing became the first city to host both a summer and a winter Olympic. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the games were held in a closed-loop system to isolate participants from the general population. Eileen Gu, competing for China, also became the global face for the games after winning 3 medals in freestyle skiing. The 2022 program also added the women's monobob and several mixed team events. These games relied almost 100% on artificial snow due to the arid climate of mountain regions around Beijing. Finally, the 2026 games that have, at the time of this video being posted, just concluded, are held across multiple cities and regions in northern Italy, including Milan and Cortina. This decentralized hosting model aimed to use existing world-class venues that Italy already has, rather than building new ones. Although we all know there was a bit of drama with the ice hockey rink being built very much last minute, and since the beginning of the games, there has been a lot of concern about how appropriate the ice have been for the different events, considering ice for figure skating, ice hockey, and speed skating has to be at very different temperatures, and has to be a different texture, basically. So speed skating, really hard ice, hockey likes this mild in-between ice, and then you have figure skater who like really soft ice. There's also been problems with podiums not being good for blades, and blades being damaged due to the podium not being covered. I've heard a few debates on that. Anyway, maybe we'll talk about this more after the games conclude completely. The 2026 Games saw the Olympic debut of ski mountaineering, or skimo, and the Games are focusing on the 20-year legacy since Turin 2006 Games and the return to the classic European heartland of winter sports. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please follow or subscribe and like, and let me know in the comments what next video you would like to see next. Poor Puppy is sleeping, so I will not be showing her for this closing part, which I normally do, but she's sleeping and I'm not going to wake her up for that, since we do have to go out for lunch very soon. So I'll see you soon. Bye! Oh, and as usual, may your team score many goals this week. Bye!